All right, Bryan. So it's Rhode, right? Bryan Rhode,
That's
even though
correct.
it's Rhode.
Yes,
Okay, good. Make sure I get that right. Okay. And I appreciate coming on. I know we had some, what was it, technical issues last time. And
yeah,
we almost had them today, but we got through it. Um, and I do want to tell your story. I mean, it's an interesting background. You didn't just like graduate high school and college and go into the apparel business. You had a long road, including starting in the military, right?
that's correct.
So maybe you want to start there and take us through the whole law school, business
Yeah,
school, corporate executive journey.
sure. So, Mitch, as you mentioned, when I graduated high school, I went on to college and got into ROTC, and then went into the Marine Corps when I finished college and served for a couple of years on active
Thank you
duty.
for your
And
service.
thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay.
And it was a wonderful, an amazing experience. A lot of responsibility and adventure at a young age, and wouldn't trade it for anything. And then when I finished my time up there, I moved on to law school and eventually became a lawyer and a prosecutor. Spent a lot of years in the courtroom, and then moved on to state government in the state of Virginia, and ultimately into a corporate job. And
As a lawyer?
to some extent, when I moved into state government, I was working for a governor, and some of the roles that I had a legal element, but
okay. But you weren't
they're more
practicing
administrative.
attorney, right?
Yeah, I sort of
Yeah.
stopped practicing law largely when I went into state government, and then, like I said, moved into a corporate job with a large company and did that for a couple of years. And when that ended, made the choice, or sort of embarked onto the entrepreneurial journey, which I know is the focus of your podcast, and been at it now coming up on 3 years, and it's been a pretty amazing experience.
Yeah,
I
and if I
sometimes
remember right, I'm kind of giving away the punchline here, but we'll get
yeah,
to it. There is a connection, right, between
yes,
the apparel business and what you're doing and your experience in the military.
exactly.
It's not like this weird connection. Oh, I'm ROTC. Of course I'm going to sell
Yeah,
men's clothing. Like there's no.
yeah,
So for people listening, there is a connection. So okay,
there
so
is.
let's because we got a good 45 minutes to an hour together. When you were in the military, did you travel around the world or was it mostly
Yeah,
yeah, you saw the world?
yeah. So I was in the infantry, so we would go on deployments overseas, and this is pre 9/11. So we'd go
Right.
overseas for usually 6 or 7 months, and the unit I was with, we'd deploy over to Okinawa, Japan, and then we get on ships from there and go all over the Pacific. And one of the advantages and nice things they would do for us when we get back from those long deployments is give us 3 or 4 weeks off, and I'd usually grab a buddy and head over to Europe and do some backpacking. So
Nice.
got to do a lot of traveling those 4 years.
So you were in the Navy, you said?
The Marine Corps.
The Marine Corps. Okay. And Marines are
Yes.
not submarines. Marines are on ships, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So the
Yeah.
Marine Corps is part of the Department of the Navy.
Got it.
As some of my friends will joke, they'll say the men's department of the United States Navy. But, uh, I say that all good humor. My father was in the Navy, and, my brother and I both became Marines, and we tease him, every generation has to do a little bit better than the one before. But in all honesty, loved our Navy brothers and sisters, and had a great time. And we would be on Navy ships when we would deploy.
Right.
So we
Well, the
worked very
difference between
closely with them.
if I understand it right, the difference between Marines and naval officers, people in the Navy, is that you're going onto the ground, right?
Yep.
You're coming off the
Yeah.
boat, getting on the shore. They're not doing that. They may be flying planes or whatever, right?
That's
Boats.
exactly right. Yeah. They drive the ships and they put us ashore, and then we go ashore and do our thing and usually come back on board the ship. But, everything that we do, we have to so closely coordinate with them, and work very closely with the Navy folks. And it is a very close partnership, and each one complements the other.
Do you think that your experience in the military helped you with, in what you're doing now and what you did in law? I mean, do you think it's good training for, I mean, I think it is, but I wasn't in the military. So
Yeah, no, I mean, it's, in terms of leadership and experience, you get so much responsibility at a young age. Like I mentioned, we were talking about, you go overseas for 6, 7 months and you've got 40 or 50 young guys who you're responsible for.
yeah.
You're responsible not only for their job performance, but every component of their life, because you're all over there together. You're moving around, you're doing dangerous stuff. And that's a lot of responsibility for a 23, 24-year-old. So
Yeah.
I think in terms of learning to handle significant things, deal with stress, it is a great training ground and teaches you how to lead by example and how to motivate people and take care of folks. And it certainly helped in so many different ways when I was both a prosecutor, a lawyer, and in the corporate world. Just, again, it's a great ground for leadership training. And the other thing with entrepreneurship in particular, you're expected to take the initiative when you're in the military. There's a lot of moving parts. Plans go awry once you get on the ground, or if you're in combat, the shots start getting fired. Things change. And you have to take the initiative. You have to understand what the ultimate objective is and find a way to get there, whether there's somebody there to tell you to do it or not.
Right, because it never plays out the way you plan it.
Exactly.
That's the way real life is, except no bullets flying around.
Yeah, exactly. And entrepreneurship is so much like that. There's certainly people you can listen to, books you can read, and guides you can try and follow. But at the end of the day, I think it was it Mike Tyson or someone said, you have a plan until you get hit in the face, and then you got to figure it out. You got to take that obstacle and find a way to overcome it. And it was not what you expected. It was not what you planned, but you just figure out a way around it. So yes, in terms of that, it was terrific training and a terrific background going into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I think being in business is like being at war, except hopefully you're not getting shot at. You might. Hopefully you're not.
Hopefully not.
Yeah. So now what led you to go, so you finished up your stint in the military, you said it was like 3 or 4 years, right? And then what made you go to law school? And ultimately, you didn't go into business law, so you went to criminal law, right?
Actually, I spent a year at a big corporate law firm, and I know,
Mitch,
I know you're a corporate lawyer. So I did M&A for, one of the big firms, and I made it about 11 and a half months. It really wasn't
before the criminal stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
And, I'd gone to law school just because, I had a great experience in the Marine Corps. I wanted to try something new.
Yeah.
I really wanted to go back and get some kind of graduate degree and really study. I was so busy in college, with all the different responsibilities and activities.
A lot of it's all programmed for you. Yeah.
Exactly. It took so much time, and I really just wanted time where I could just really enmesh myself in something that was really interesting to learn. And so I turned to law school and had a great experience there. And, when I came out, I went to work at one of the big firms, and, it just wasn't for me. And I had been in a bar mentorship program, and the mentor they paired me with happened to be the elected prosecutor in the city. And, we were talking a little bit about it. He'd come from a big firm, and we had similar backgrounds. We'd gone to the same law school, and, he called me up one day because he knew I was a little bit interested in it. And he said, look, do you really want to work for basically about a third of what I was working for at the law firm?
It's not well paying, right?
No. I said, absolutely. I married well. My wife is also a lawyer, and she's at a firm, so I can afford to do it.
Yeah. I think people don't know that, us being lawyers, we don't really specialize in anything in law school. You're only there for 3 years. You might take an extra course or two, and then you do an internship, but ultimately you meet somebody who says, oh, you're interested in that? Sure. I'll take you under my wing and I'll teach you what I know. And that's kind of how it happens. Right.
Right. I actually heard you on one of your other podcasts. You were talking about law, and, law in a certain way. You go to law school and you're taught academic law. The folks who go on to be circuit court, Supreme Court clerks, and ultimately professors.
Very few of us do that.
Yeah. Very few do that. That's the law you learn in law school.
That's what people think about when they see it on TV.
Yeah. You don't learn how to really try a case. You can take some cases in trial advocacy and things, classes in trial advocacy.
Right.
But when I became a corporate lawyer, I took corporate law classes, but I took corporate law classes that talked about case law, not about how you actually write a contract.
Right. I took contracts and I didn't really learn how to write a contract. You can learn a little bit, but yeah. It's a thinking exercise, I think, right? Going to law school. Yeah.
Totally agree. And so you actually learn the law once you actually get out there and practice it. And I think that was one of the reasons why I didn't really mesh with the corporate law that I was doing, because particularly at a low level as a young associate, you're doing things that
junk.
If you're just good at reading and attention to detail and just willing to go through volumes and volumes of
they're like, here, mark up this 1,000-page contract.
Yes.
Like, what?
Change the names and the dates.
You don't even know what you're highlighting at the beginning, right? You're just highlighting everything.
Yes, I know. Exactly. And it's just, it was not, wasn't what I was looking for at the time. I worked with some wonderful people. It was a great firm, but wasn't quite for me.
Yeah, it's just paper. It's a lot of paper, not a lot of people. So you really just kind of fortuitously, he took you under his wing and you got to learn the corporate side. The criminal side. Did you like that a lot more than?
I did.
Yeah,
I did. I remember, it was probably my second week on the job, and I was sitting around with some of the prosecutors, and we had just been in court, and I'd watched one of their cases, and they asked me, what do you think? And it's just something that hadn't been asked to me in a year at a big
Right.
corporate law firm, but you get thrown right into the mix, and you're on your feet all day, and you're in court. And I've always said this, it's an amazing experience because you're doing great public service, and you're helping people, particularly victims. But aside from that, I've always said, if you're a writer and you have writer's block, just mosey on down to your local criminal court and sit there for a day, because truth is far stranger than fiction. You can't make up half the
Oh my
stuff
God.
that you see on a day-to-day
clerked for
basis.
one of the criminal court judges when I was in law school in New York. A lot of them are elected. And I'm talking one semester. I had the wackiest cases, the wackiest results. The people showing up, the attorney yelling at the judge for something, judge throwing him out of the courtroom. The defendant, who he was, I guess he was a public defender assigned to him, was like, I don't have a lawyer. What do I do? We'll get you another lawyer. It was just so funny. In the middle of the trial, the judge is like, can you see my jacket over there? And I'm like, first your law. I'm like, look, yeah. He's like, go to my jacket, and inside is a checkbook. I need my checkbook. Now there's a trial going on, right? They're giving. I see him because it's all blocked, the way his bench is. So he's writing. He's like filling out his Bloomingdale's. Pay. He's doing his checks. So if there's an objection for something, he looks up. Can you read that back? And they read back the transcript, and he goes, "You're overruled." Then he goes back to doing what he's doing.
Well, I've seen judges nod off on the bench. I remember one of the first early cases, I was sitting outside the courtroom, and I was standing next to one of the prosecutors who was more senior, and the deputies they literally carry this guy out. He's kicking and screaming and fighting. I don't know what had happened in the courtroom, but he was putting up a hell of a fight, and they just took him down the hallway. I defend her. Yeah. And
whatever.
So they
wasn't the judge, right? Yeah.
And the other prosecutor's eating an apple, and he sort of nonchalantly looks at me. He's like, "You don't see that at Hunt and Williams every day, do you?"
Right. It's true. Yeah, that was a good experience. But that made me not want to go into corporate law. I'm like, I can't. Criminal law. I can't deal with this every day.
I worked with such terrific people, and it was so interesting all the time. And they just similar to the military, similar to being an entrepreneur. Good, bad, or indifferent. There's just so much work that you're on your own pretty soon, and you're making decisions. You're deciding how to try a case. You're deciding what to do with the case. And that was much more aligned with me than being more of the advisor, or, even at a corporate firm at a young level, you're not advising anybody. You're just working for a more senior partner.
They're billing you out.
Exactly. And they're billing you out. It's another way to live life. I remember my first month there, they sort of gave you the great week at a nice hotel and introduced everybody. This is your computer. This is how everything works. And then I think I billed 255 hours the first month.
Yeah, you barely went home.
I'd go home at 2 a.m. and have to catch a flight to Chicago at 6.
Yeah. Nuts.
It's like, all the stories are true.
Well, criminal law is more like, you're more on your feet. You're not writing large briefs. You're not, submitting maybe a little bit, but most of it is trial work, right?
Exactly. And it's, the bigger cases, you'll have some time to prepare, but a lot of them, when you're in the lower level courts, you go with a big docket. You've read through the cases, but
making motions right to the judge, right?
Yeah. See what happens. And, you learn how to handle certain types of cases, and you just have to roll with it because the volume is so high, and you have to get through cases quickly. And, there was one of my favorite judges when I was a young prosecutor, and still keep in touch with him. He'd been on the bench for probably 25 years by the time I started appearing in front of him. And he was known as Judge Iron Bladder because he had literally his morning routine down, and when to have his last coffee, when to make his last bathroom break. And he'd hit the bench at 9 a.m. and he would not get off till 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and he never stopped. And you had to be running back in and out of the courtroom and handling it all and keep up with him. And, I'm not exaggerating. I lost 10 pounds in the first couple of months that I worked there just because I was on my feet hustling all day.
Right. No time for lunch. Can't even eat. Right.
No.
Like going when you're in his break. Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, the judges, they want to run their court a certain way, right? A lot of judges are like that. Yeah. They're changing nowadays.
Yeah. And he had a huge docket, and once he started, he didn't want to stop. He just pressed through until it was done.
Yeah.
He could have taken a break for lunch. He could have adjourned, but he wouldn't. He'd just keep rolling.
Right. Well, I think, right, when you have a big docket like that and you have a huge work caseload, maybe you're
Yeah.
settling a lot of stuff, but you're still ending
Yeah.
up in court every day. I mean, there's still stuff
Yeah.
to do, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was
And was
usually
this
sort of
down?
one.
I know you went to school in Virginia. Was this down in Virginia, DC area?
Yeah. Yeah. Richmond, Virginia. So
Got it. That's the county seat, right? Richmond,
it's the capital of the state.
the
So the
capital
capital
state.
is
That's
there.
what I meant.
The state government is there.
Yeah.
Back in the 90s in particular, it was really, really bad for crime, and particularly high murder rate that since had come way down, but it was still a very, very busy criminal docket. And, there was certainly a lot of work to be done, and, never a dull moment.
So how long were you with them doing the criminal
I was
stuff?
there 6 years.
Oh, for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I had run for political office, and am grateful every day that I didn't win, particularly when I see how
Looking back,
polarized
I'm sure. Yeah.
awful things are at
Right.
times. And some of my friends were still, in the process, but that had led to working for a governor who happened to be in office at the time. And
Oh, that was after. So as a result of running, making connections, whatever, then he
yeah,
asked you
yeah, it
to
was
take
kind
a
of that.
position. Right. Okay.
Yeah, I kind of knew some folks, and they had a position open up and asked if I wanted it, and went to work for him. Wonderful guy, and spent the rest of the administration with him. And in Virginia, they can only serve one term. So
Okay. 4 years.
when his term ended, that's when I took a job with a company and did more of the corporate side of things. But you're right. Since I left being a prosecutor, I really haven't practiced law full time since
Yeah.
then.
So you went there. So then you went back to the corporate side, but not the corporate legal side. So
Yeah.
that was more executive stuff, right?
Yeah. So I started in government affairs for this company in Virginia, and then I had sort of the Mid-Atlantic region, and then they transferred me where I am now to Jacksonville, Florida, and was in charge of the audit department for the company. And then they had a big public safety department, which I eventually ended up taking over. And, when I worked in state government, the department that I worked in was the Department of Public Safety, Secretary of Public Safety. And it transitioned and sort of overlapped pretty well. A lot of
This company did a lot of government contracts. Is that why?
Not a lot of government contracts, but it was a railroad. So unfortunately,
thus the public safety side of it, right?
Yeah, railroads move a lot of stuff, and sometimes the trains do wreck, and there's a lot of flammable stuff, a lot of chemicals, a lot of things like that. So, that background and sort of emergency response, public safety is helpful.
Yeah. So how long were you with them?
That was 5 years.
And that your last position was them as head of public safety?
Yep. And that ended in 2019. And then I took a little bit of time off, and I was sort of, exploring the entrepreneurship angle, and actually had a couple of different ideas.
Yeah. Like what did you have? I'm curious.
Well, one of the ideas I had was for sort of, it was more of a curated news service.
Okay.
And, I knew to really, and I still would like to do it at some point. Nobody has really done
like online web-based type of stuff.
More audio based.
Okay.
But, and again, based on my experience, I worked for a governor, worked for a secretary, was a secretary of a huge department. When you're preparing for your day, whether you're at that high level or not, just being able to have a good 15, 20-minute briefing of all the stuff that you need to know that day.
Yeah.
In a very concise fashion that's very tailored to you.
Yeah.
I always wanted that. It's so hard to actually find good news anymore. All you just go through the channels and it's just, okay, here's two people who don't know what they're talking about, and let them scream at each other. Go. And that's, that's not what I need in the morning. I don't want to listen to that. So I always struggled to find, good, concise news of everything I need to know by the time I hit the door in the office. And that was kind of the idea. But
it's a good idea. So your clients would be like an industry, like an association or a large corporation, where you would put together let's say a 15-minute podcast, right?
Yep.
Covering the items and the things. So I do know one guy who kind of does that. He used to be on the radio, and his clients are like a transportation association.
Yeah.
And every Wednesday or maybe every morning, whatever, he puts out just for the association members, this 15-minute, whatever update.
Yeah. Yeah. And people have nibbled around the edges, with different industries and things. There are, one of the positions I held in that gubernatorial administration was head of the state's alcohol agency.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a guy from one of the companies, he puts together all the news clips for the day and sends it out to everybody in the industry who subscribes. But, you got to read the clip. And you still have
Yeah,
to
it's an
sort of
audio
go through it.
newsletter is what it is.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
nobody's actually gone through it and actually
No.
sort of culled the key information for you. So that was
I'm
one
surprised
idea.
because the podcasting industry is so big. You'd think that would be something that would be going on already, but you're right. It's only happening in little pockets.
I think it's manpower intensive. And for me, I knew I'd have to find a co-founder who really understood technology, could build platforms, and I knew I was going to have to raise money for that. And that was probably a little bit too high of a hill for me to climb at the time.
Right.
This just seemed a lot more feasible. I don't know if it ended up being that way, but with ACUMEN and apparel, I at least thought I could see a much more direct route where I could kind of do it on my own and figure it out and start at a smaller scale and see how it went. So it's probably taken longer than expected, but part of that was COVID, and part of that, as I'm sure you hear from a lot of your guests, just figuring things out and feeling your way forward can take more time than you expect. And when you have to manufacture something, particularly if you build a supply chain overseas, it just takes a long time.
Right.
It's just not a quick process.
Right. But you have no background in apparel. You have no background in men's clothing. You have no background as a haberdasher or anything like that.
I just wear them.
You just you wear clothes, right? You don't walk around naked. So you got that going for you.
Got that going for me. Which is nice.
So how do you make the leap from audio newsletters industry to, was there anything in between the two also that you were thinking about, or no?
No, I looked at a couple of, businesses to buy.
Yeah.
And, the thing that held me back from that, I won't go too far down that rabbit hole, is just, it's sort of Warren Buffett's advice, like, don't invest in things you don't understand. And there's, there was enough that I looked at where, like, yeah, exactly. But I can ease into that. You buy sort of a brick and mortar place, with ongoing expenses, ongoing customers. If you don't, there could be a huge pothole like right in front of you, and you just don't know it because you're not in the industry.
Right.
And all of a sudden you've taken on this huge amount of debt to purchase this business. So that was, I wanted to build something of my own too.
Yeah, no, I understand.
The more I thought about it, it seemed to make sense. And, you had connected it earlier, you had teased it earlier about how my experience in the military had led to this. And it was my experience in the military. It was my experience as a prosecutor in corporate America, that led me to this idea that was started with the ACUMEN set. And, when I was in the Marine Corps, we'd wear these things called shirt stays with our dress uniforms. So any of your guests, if they have this image of the Marine in his dress uniform and how they look, super
has it all stay tucked in and everything. Yeah. Exactly. There's secrets.
There's secrets.
We're giving them away. We're giving them away. Pulling back the veil today.
Exactly.
On the military dress. Okay.
So there's like the military tuck in the back of your shirt where you fold it so it fits snugly around your waist. You use things like shirt stays, which are elastic bands that connect the shirt to the sock and just tighten it down, keep the shirt down, the socks up.
That runs all the way from the shirt tail all the way down your leg to your sock. Okay.
Exactly. And then things like, something called your gig line, where you keep your line of your buttons aligned with your belt, aligned with your zipper. That makes it look sort of sharp and put together. So all those little secrets. And, when I became a prosecutor, I was wearing a suit every day, going to court every day. And Mitch, you probably remember, I'm sure a lot of your listeners do, 5, 6, 7 years ago, guys were wearing really baggy stuff. The shirts were big. They were like tense. We wore pleated pants. They were baggy. And some people still do, but things have really trimmed down over the past few years. And I kind of like that. And I found, particularly when I went into a corporate job, I was wearing business casual every day and started wearing the more slim or athletic or trimmed dress shirts. And I was finding, because they sort of hug your core a little bit tighter, every time I got up from my desk, I was having to tuck it back in. Now they look great, but I had to tuck them back in all the time.
Right. Of course.
Yeah. Shirt stays they're a bit impractical for daily wear. You got to attach them to the shirt, attach them to the socks. So I'd come up with my own crude prototype where I just cut off the tops and sewn them into my shirt. Tried it with one shirt, liked it, put in all my shirts. Was wearing that for a while. Had a friend, he said, look, you should really try to patent that. I'd taken a look at it.
But you were just really doing it for your own shirts.
Yeah. And I was really busy at the time, so I didn't really have the time to get into patenting it or actually making it. The one advice I got from
this is while you're exploring business opportunities that you were looking at. You didn't even think of shirts.
Yeah. And he was, literally, it was a case of, I really have to get this made right before I can patent it. I just didn't have the time at the time, that suggestion was made. And then when I did embark on the journey, decided that we're going to make these, but make them in a way that makes it much easier to wear on a daily basis, where you can detach them where they are super secure, super soft, super comfortable, proprietary. It's a closed system, sort of like Apple. And you need our shirts to wear our shirt stays and our socks to wear our shirt stays.
Right,
but
they're not interchangeable.
yeah, once you try them, they're amazing. And then, when we sort of got going with this brand, it started with that core idea, the core idea of the set. But it's developed, as many things do when you get into a new business, into the idea of this brand, which is we want to solve problems for men.
Right.
So the first problem we started with is, are you that guy who doesn't, or have you seen that guy who has his shirt untucked? He goes to a big presentation in front of the board of directors, or a big sales pitch and his shirt tail's hanging out, or even, goes on that big important first date from the girl he really likes, and doesn't realize his shirt's half untucked and he looks disheveled and he looks, unkempt, and that creates an impression to people. So, what we want to do is not only have the ACUMEN set, which is designed to solve the problem of a shirt untucked, we're trying to branch that out and build on it into other problems. So our next product that we're releasing here should be
let's
next
back up
week.
for a second, because
Sure,
you call it the ACUMEN set, right?
Yes.
So what is the set? It's more than a shirt.
Yeah. So if you go to our website at shopacumen.com, you'll see sort of a layout of how the set works. And we have an array of amazing dress shirts. They all have stretch. They all are wrinkle resistant.
Right.
And we put them into different categories to sort of meet all of men's needs.
Of course,
so
you're going to say that though, too, because it's your product. You love it. So of course you're going to say that. And now it better be that way when somebody orders it.
It is. And I'll tell you, because these are all based on my experiences, Mitch. Like, these are the things that I wish I had had. I'd always said, like, I wish I could get a shirt that did this.
Yeah.
Why don't more shirts
get it done?
And so we have our executive category, which is kind of your standard dress shirt, but great designs. We have our disruptor category, which is much more fashion forward. So if you have a night out, if you're on that important first date, or you're taking clients out for the evening, great shirt to wear out. And then we have our entrepreneur category, which all have tons of stretch, super stretchy, very casual. If you have a casual jeans Friday, perfect for that. And then a Renaissance man category, which is the evening wear, tuxedo shirts. And all of them have the ability to integrate our shirt stays. And so when you go to our website, you pick your category, pick your shirt, and it just takes you through it step by step. We have a specialized bundler on the website. Okay. You pick your shirt, pick your shirt stays, and then the socks are literally the softest dress socks you'll ever wear. I guarantee that. Return them if that's not true. We sort of stumbled backwards into that. The socks were one of those things where, honestly, of all the things that we manufactured, and the shirt stays, we had an engineering firm that, iteration after iteration to design these things. The socks were actually the hardest to manufacture. We went through 7 different factories. And
in terms of the quality, you didn't like how they weren't soft enough. Exactly. They weren't this or that. Yeah.
Weren't soft enough, couldn't execute the patterns, couldn't attach the attachment that we needed for the shirt stays well enough. I mean, any number of problems. And we absolutely just sort of stumbled on a factory that has just produced these socks, and they are the softest things that you can wear. So whether you wear them with the set or not, my mother wears these things around the house just because they're so comfortable. She wears them like slippers. They're that soft and that comfortable.
Right, so people don't think they're soft enough, they send them back to you, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you don't, if you can find something better, show me, because I've worn them all and I've never come across ones that are this soft. So we love them. So that's what you do. Okay. You buy a shirt, you buy the shirt stays, and you buy the socks, and it comes together in a great package.
That's built. The set.
Yeah. And that's what we started with. And that's our core product right now. And
how old is the company at this point?
So we're coming up on 3 years old. So about 2.5 right now, a little over 2.5 years old.
So right in the middle of the pandemic, like you plowed right through it.
Yeah. So
timing is everything.
We would have gotten to market faster.
Of course.
Had the world not shut down.
Yeah, right. That's a lot.
We were literally going into production when everything in China shut down. They went home for Chinese New Year and
never came back.
Just never came back.
I know.
For those manufacturers overseas, you have that sort of month to 5 or 6 week break, and they just didn't come back for a couple months.
Yeah, right.
And,
I know, it's crazy.
Then we had, this is an aside, we had switched from our manufacturing to Vietnam just to get whacked this summer, and they shut down for about 3 months.
Yeah, because then it hit there, right?
It did hit there. So
Yeah.
it's been a journey.
Well, resilience is definitely a learned skill. But I had a question for you, because I had a guy on my podcast earlier who was, self-taught, didn't graduate college, started a business, sold the business to a private equity group. It was a, what did they do? Something in the car audio business, but whatever. He doesn't have, the kind of background and training that you and I have, right?
Yeah.
So he's never really written a business plan. He's kind of, I wouldn't say he's winged it, but feeling out the marketplace, figuring out what's there. So you came out, you have a military background, you went to law school, you're in corporate America. When you got started, right? When you said, okay, you're researching, did you write a business plan? Did you put together strategic plans? Do you do that regularly? I mean, obviously there's a lot of moving parts, right? So I was just curious as to how do you form it, write it, do it, all that type of stuff from an entrepreneur standpoint.
So I looked at formal business plans. I did not put together the same formal business plan that you might put together if you were going out to raise money.
Right.
Because
and you don't need to.
I was self-funding.
Right.
I will say, but I did put together the model of how I wanted to approach this and the amount of funding that I wanted to put into it and what I thought our demarcations would be. And we've been very, very close to that. I had projections about what it would take to get to the different stages of the business, and we've stayed on that. And there have been surprises. There have been delays, with COVID, and just the fact that it's not as easy just to pick a factory and they will magically make what you want. Have to change factories and find new ones. But yeah, I've largely been able to stay on track from what I envisioned. I'll tell you now, like the challenges that I face now are just, how do you sell the product? How do you break through the noise? What are the most effective mechanisms?
I can go online and I want a men's shirt. I'll get 14,000 choices on Amazon, right?
Exactly.
And I don't know what's good or bad or crap, or I had no idea.
And it's overwhelming. And one of the challenges too with e-commerce and apparel is people are much more comfortable nowadays buying apparel in e-commerce, but still a lot of people want to touch it, feel it. And if they don't know
if it's going to fit, right? Unless it's something they bought before. Like once they get past being a customer, they know how it fits and what it is. Then they just can order a bunch and it's easy.
Exactly. Yeah, but it's getting over that first hurdle.
Yeah.
Of getting them to try you, particularly when you're new. And if they don't know anybody who's tried you.
So from a business development standpoint, like you and I met through your publicist, your PR person, Andrea, she got you. So you're obviously out there doing promotion and promoting the company, but from a business development standpoint, what do you do? How do you educate people? Where do you advertise? How are you doing that side of the business? Obviously that's most important, right? No revenue in has nothing to do with how many shirts you make. They'll just send them on the shelf somewhere.
Yeah. So we started with sort of your traditional digital advertising, and we just weren't finding that as effective or as quick as we would like to. I think, the big tech companies will tell you how amazing they can target things. That's a little bit different now with the new Apple iOS update where people can opt out, but it wasn't as effective as I'd hoped. And maybe they will lead you to believe, maybe for some products it is, but we've sort of pivoted to try to get earned media with a publicist. We've also just in the past couple of weeks pivoted to really focus on video. Static digital ads there's so much noise. People are barraged with it so much they're immune to it. And with a product like ours, which has a really unique value proposition that needs to be explained, and it can't really be done in a single photo or a single ad, video's going to be just much more effective with us. So we've now started down that road to really focus on video production and identifying the problem that we're trying to solve and how our product solves it. And hopefully within the next month to 6 weeks, we'll have our first videos appearing, and we just keep trying different things. And I'm also, I talked about the business plan. The original business plan did not entail pursuing retail partnerships any time in the near future. That
wasn't part of the original strategic plan?
I thought it could be something that would eventually happen.
Right.
But through probably more twist of circumstance than plan, we've been able to establish a couple retail partnerships, and that's been fruitful. So I'm actually pivoting and focusing more on that than I thought I would.
Now, how did those opportunities come about? Was it because of supply chain issues? They're looking for additional product or connections, or what happened?
It started actually pretty randomly. I was looking to explore that, and I was looking at some potential trade shows to go to. Happened to be Atlanta on business for something else, and stopped by the Atlanta Mart, and
Okay.
was just taking a look at the space and learning how those work. You know, they, with some level of frequency, different types of consumer goods will have shows, and happened to stop by the men's store there. That's a permanent men's store within the Mart. Gave the guy my card. He was actually helping a customer, didn't even speak to him. And then that night I'm at dinner, I get a phone call, and he's like, "Hey man, I looked at your website, loved your stuff. Like, can we talk?"
There you go.
And so he ended up being our first sort of retail customer, and has been a great customer since then. And you know,
But he's a custom shop. I mean, he's not
Yes.
a chain like the Gap or whatever. It's a small.
No,
And that's
no,
what you're
he's a
looking for. You're
standalone.
looking for boutique, right?
Exactly.
That's your marketplace.
His dad, I was in there, you know, a couple of weeks ago. His father started, I think, in 1961, and met his dad. He still has his dad come in and work for him.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah.
But you know, it wasn't really planned. It was literally that. I just gave him my card because I wanted to ask him about how the marts were, how these shows
Right.
were they worthwhile? And he calls me back. He's like, "Well, forget that." He's like, "Just sell to me."
Right.
He's
We
like,
want to sell your product.
He's like, "I'd love to partner with you." So we did, and so I'm pursuing all the. We're still working very hard on e-commerce. I think it's critical to really establish the brand, to have, you know, a vibrant e-commerce business, to get it out there, introduced to people to be able to come back easily. But we're exploring retail probably more quickly than we had thought we would.
And are the shirts semi-custom? Like, are people picking neck sizes, arm length, things like that? Or is it small, medium, large, extra large, that type of stuff?
Small, medium, large, extra large for now, because just the number of SKUs and the volume.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
To have
Right.
huge.
Yeah.
Really, you have to be a pretty big player to be able to get into those. But the way we size our shirts, they do fit most guys. We do size them right now. Our initial offering more on sort of the tapered side, where, you know, it's broader in the shoulders and a little bit more narrow around the waist, simply because shirts of yesteryear used to be straight down. They were wide in the shoulders, wide in the waist, and they were just baggy and loose. And in order to solve that problem of not looking baggy and loose, not looking disheveled, you really do need that tapered cut. And so that's what we've focused.
Well, your customer obviously is going to be a slimmer customer. I mean, if you're overweight, you're not going to be buying a shirt that stays in tucked neat all the time, right? It's just not gonna play well, not gonna look good.
I know. I've had some of my friends say, "When are you going to do the dad bod shirt?" And I said, "Look, guys, I mean, actually, we'll work well for you."
That's not your marketplace, really, right?
It's not necessarily my market, no. But you know, some of the dad bod guys, I think, struggle the most with their shirts coming untucked. And
I have a little bit of a belly from being a dad. It's the same. I have the same problem. Although I don't have to tuck my shirts in all the time because I'm in jeans in the office a lot of times. But I told you that I have a long torso, so my waist tends to be short. And I told you that I have these T-shirts that it took me a lot of research, but I found Fruit of the Loom makes these like extra long T-shirts. Yeah, I'm wearing one right now because it bothers the crap out of me.
It does.
To have, especially if your shirt's still in and your undershirt is out.
You can't.
So uncomfortable.
You have to go to the bathroom. You literally have to.
It's terrible. It's terrible. So when I found these things, I bought like 3 dozen of them, and as much as they shrink, they don't get shorter. So I solved that problem. But that could be something else you carry. You got to carry an extra long T-shirt so it stays.
That's our next thing. So we mentioned a little bit, but hopefully we'll be launching them next week. But our undershirts, and so, you know, again, the ethos of the brand, this idea that we're here to solve problems. You know, we start with the set. Gives you a great shirt that stays tucked, that, you know, when you're given that big presentation, you have to worry about not looking your best.
You're the opposite of untucked.
Exactly. But you know, at the same time, we also designed our shirts, you know, shirts of yesteryear, again, you know, these dress shirts, they hung down super low in the front and super low in the back with these high waist cuts.
Right.
You know, all Untuck did was flatten the hemline. So we did the same thing. So you can wear our shirts tucked or untucked. They look great untucked.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty easy fix, but it's interesting. In the apparel industry, innovation is small little increments. One company does one little innovation, one company does another little innovation. There's not many that put it all together, which is what we're trying to do. And our next product is that undershirt for exactly that problem. So you have a shirt that's tapered, fits you well, it's nice and tightly tucked, but you're wearing a Fruit of the Loom cotton undershirt that's baggy. You can see the lines underneath your shirt. And once it
worst.
comes up, you wash it once, it's a third of its original size.
Yeah, forget it. You're done.
And then it's hanging out around your waist. And once it comes above your belt line, like you literally have to go to the bathroom and disrobe to like pull that thing back down.
Yeah.
So we have this undershirt. It's modal material. It's super soft, form fitting. It's longer, so it stays down and hopefully solves that problem that you were talking about.
That's pretty funny. So
Yeah.
when did you launch, in terms of retail where consumer B2C could buy the product? When was that first launched?
So September, we launched.
This past
We were ready to
September.
go in August of 2021. And we did the soft launch and we were sort of beta testing the website and then started letting sort of the friends and family know in September. And then I think it was probably October, mid to late October before we started advertising it all.
And how's it going so far in terms of orders?
It's
and
going well.
receipts and stuff?
Like I said, the retail has been faster and probably more promising than I expected. The e-commerce is more difficult to break through than I expected. I think when we launched, we weren't prepared to tell the story in as detailed a way and explain the product as well as we need to. And that's why we're pivoting to video. We were doing it with GIFs and pictures, and it just wasn't as effective as it needs to be. So we're going to pivot more to videos that are a lot easier for people to understand, more interesting to watch, and we'll hopefully see some results from that. But it's going well. We're about to have our second release ship next week and should be here in about 6 weeks. And
you had any supply chain issues?
The supply chain issues that we've had are just the delays when the factories have shut down. So the second release was envisioned to be here before Christmas, but it was not, simply because our factory in Vietnam had shut down from basically end of July till October.
Yeah.
And it didn't hurt us that much, and it's actually okay. We've been fortunate. We've established some really good relationships with our suppliers and our factories. So we're happy with where we are with our supply chain, and we keep getting better. All the products that we're doing, every new release, we're getting a little bit better. We're learning and iterating and improving, and see a lot of runway and new problems to solve, from the shirt being tucked to the undershirt that bunches up to hopefully pants will be next, and keep on going from that to, suit coats and other problems. And so, for your listeners too, I mean, if you have an annoying apparel problem, particularly for professional
Send you an email.
Send me an email. We're open to it. And people say things, this thing annoys me, or this thing annoys me. Like you said, like I hate the undershirt, and it's that's what we're here for. That ultimately is what we want to build the brand. We want to make it something that is very overtly, supportive of men. We want, we have this saying, we want to solve your problems so you can solve the world's. And I mean that. I want guys to be able to go into that environment where they want to excel and not have to worry about some annoying apparel problem. They know they look their best, and it's not vanity. It's not anything like that. I mean, if you look sharp and you're put together, you don't have to worry about it, and you can focus on the task at hand. That's our goal.
Right. All right. So what I was going to ask you, you talked about the product, launching the product. What would you say are, as an entrepreneur, because I find that with all the, I've obviously done a lot of interviews. Today was our 200th episode release.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
That's awesome.
And that's just time. There's nothing.
Yeah.
Stick
to a lot of work into it.
Is that the word? Stick to it.
Yes, but you put a lot of work into it. I mean, these episodes.
But I've learned a lot from a lot of people, and I consistently see that the ones that are successful they never are complacent about testing, getting to know their client base, seeing how they're reaching it. Like you said, you didn't think retail was going to be big, or, an opportunity early on, and it kind of fell in your lap. And, so I think that I was wondering what you would say to people listening, you're not a new executive, but you're a new entrepreneur, really, right?
Yeah.
Something you chose to do. Have been some of your challenges, if we can kind of put, some of them are COVID related, right?
Yeah.
But one or two as pieces of advice to people, like, hey, I would do this differently, or you should do this. This worked for us, or something like that, generically.
Yeah, I think the most important characteristic for an entrepreneur, and you mentioned it, whether you call it stick-to-itiveness or just persistence or perseverance,
is a good word.
I think that's the number one thing, because I'm sure there are some entrepreneurs that come up with an idea and it is a unicorn or a shooting star from the beginning, and it's just a rocket ride. You listen to those podcasts, read those books, they're out there.
Right.
Most are not like that.
Those are rare. Yeah.
Those are rare.
Yeah.
And most are a slog. And you're going to wake up at 4 a.m. in a cold sweat going, what am I doing? I could be in a very secure job making very decent money, and this is totally unknown. I may go through this entire journey and find out that people don't like my product, or it may fail for some other reason, and I've invested all this time and effort. So my advice to folks who are thinking about it is absolutely pursue your dream if you really think that you have what it takes. But I've heard it said that most businesses or entrepreneurs fail not necessarily because the business idea is bad or the product is bad, but they just quit. Yeah. And you may have a business idea that's not great or a product that's not great.
That's why you test and check and test and check. Know it as early as you can.
Right. And pivot and iterate. Sort of an adjunct to what we were saying. The persistence. It's also, don't be entirely locked into your idea of what it has to be. Be open, like you were saying, to learning. Getting that feedback. Like, okay, well, one of the things is I sort of alluded to earlier. We sort of stumbled onto these socks. These socks we will probably start selling in a much more standalone version because they're really great and people love them.
Right.
And so even if you don't want to wear the shirt stays, the socks are amazing. I mean, I think, and we'll say they are the best out there in the market. And sometimes you back into something like that. I mean, it's
right. You could initially think like, who's going to want these? And then you find out that everybody wants them.
Everybody loves them.
Or the opposite, right? You think a problem is something needs to be solved and nobody cares.
Yeah, exactly.
You definitely want to know that sooner than later, right? I mean,
ideally, yes. Yeah, before you invest too much money and time. But
exactly.
I think the biggest thing is just it's sticking to it and being committed to it, and just knowing that you're going to have hard times. There are so many times where I woke up and got an email from a manufacturer, I got a sample in the mail that just wasn't right or didn't work, or some other issue which seemed, at the instant that you encounter it, death for the company, death for the business.
Right.
This is it. It's all over.
Yeah.
And you just work through it, and you go on to the next problem, and you work through it, even though it seems insurmountable at times, and you just got to stick to it. So it's probably not very original, but that's what I've learned.
Consistent themes are what it's about. There's no magic formula to being successful except doing the things that other people aren't willing to do.
Yeah. Talk to people. Honestly, since we started, looking and talking to, folks and podcasts and entrepreneurship, I try to listen to a few episodes at a minimum of some of the podcasts. I listened to some of yours today, and I've learned a heck of a lot from different people. And I always scroll through and try and find one that's interesting and relevant. And you can learn so much, and you can glean a lot. Not to be funny, but there's that movie with Tom Cruise where he's the race car driver and he shows up. And, he said, "You're a stock car racer." Yeah, Cole Trickle says, "You never drove a stock car." He's like, "Well, I've watched ESPN. You'd be amazed. The coverage is amazing." You can learn a lot. So, not to make light of it, but you can learn a lot about entrepreneurship and pitfalls people have had
listening to
these things. What they've done.
Bryan, I appreciate it very much. The company's ACUMEN. They can certainly find you on the web, right? If they want to learn about you, you're on LinkedIn, I assume.
Yes.
You're putting stuff on Instagram, the company.
Yep.
And the videos, apparel. What's there going to be a YouTube channel, or is there going to be videos on the website?
We'll put them on the website, but eventually, yes, we'll have a YouTube channel.
And do you have a mailing list? Like if somebody goes to your website, they can sign up, learn about all your products. So
absolutely. So sign up, get a 10% discount, and
awesome.
We'll send you our newsletter.
All right, Bryan, thank you so much. I appreciate us finally connecting. And thank Andrea for introducing us.
Yeah, thanks, Mitch. Appreciate it.